So my talk today is called the Namaste Mindset. And in addition to yoga centers, where you may have heard the word Namaste, who's heard the word Namaste before? Everybody's heard it, right? The word Namaste appears in many Unity services. And I'm just curious, what does Namaste mean to you? Anybody want to give me a shout out? What does Namaste mean? Peace be to you. Light within me honors the light within you. I see God in you. Barbara?
The divinity in me sees the divinity in you.
Divinity in me sees the divinity in you. Yeah. Okay, talk over. That was easy. So it's, I want to explore this word, but this idea behind it. And Namaste is a Sanskrit term that literally means I bow to you. So you may often see it done this way, Namaste. Two people are bowing to each other. And as you said, it means the God in me sees the God in you. The divine in me knows the divine in you. And so this divine awareness can be used as a spiritual practice. It can be used as a way of being in the world. And I'm going to explain a few ways how we can use this Namaste mindset together with what it really is. It's Christ consciousness. It's Namaste consciousness, whatever you want to call it. And I want to give you some examples of it. And sure, there are many situations where Namaste is easy, right? You see your best friend, Namaste, Namaste. It's easy that way. But when you're thinking about a certain relative, or maybe an ex, or a coworker, or somebody that you are at odds with, Namaste is hard to feel in the heart sometimes, isn't it? And it's hard to see that in those moments there's nowhere that God is not, and it's right where they're sitting. It's so hard to see that. There's a Buddhist teacher named Pema Chodron you may have heard of, and she tells a story about a spiritual teacher named Gurdjieff. And Gurdjieff, the spiritual teacher, had a thriving spiritual community. But there was a particular student in his community who was really bad-tempered. Everything would set this guy off, so everybody had to tippy-toe around this person because anything that was said that you didn't know what was going to upset this guy. And people in that community just wished that that student would go away. And the teacher, Gurdjieff, liked to make his students do things that didn't always make sense. They were quite meaningless. Like one day, he made his students, about 40 people at that time, cut sections of grass in the lawn and move them around to different parts of the facility. And that was just too much for this irritable student. It was the last straw. This guy blew up, he got in his car, he drove off, and then everyone broke into spontaneous celebration. Yay, he's gone, he's gone. They were thrilled. They were so happy he was gone. But when they told Gurdjieff what had happened, Gurdjieff said, "Oh no," and immediately Gurdjieff got in his car and went driving after him. Kind of a mystery, right? 3 days later, they came back, and that night, Gurdjieff's assistant was sitting with him and asked, "Sir, why did you bring that student back?" And Gurdjieff answered in a very low voice. He said, "You're not going to believe this, and this is just between you and me. Tell no one, but I pay him to stay here." He pays him to stay here for the lessons that he will teach people. Because if we were all in a community where everybody was simpatico, everybody liked each other truly every moment, there wouldn't be a lot of learning. So that's such an interesting illustration of how can Namaste come into consciousness in that situation. So I will say that everyone, if you think about this, everyone in your life is there to help you. And everyone in your life you can think of as God in disguise. Some people say God in drag, everyone in life, right? And it's hard to see when that person is being a pain in the you know what, right? And so I received some further guidance from, does anybody get TUT, Message from the Universe? It's an email you can subscribe to called TUT, Messages from the Universe. And I got this email that says, whether it's obvious or not, David, and it's usually not obvious, everyone in your life is there to help you, and they're actually doing so right now. Tally ho, the universe. That's how this thing signs off. That's all it gets, is it just disturbs you and then it goes away. So often the most challenging people and relationships contain the greatest gifts, the greatest gifts. And I think they're there to help teach us this namaste consciousness or compassion. But how do we get to that namaste consciousness? How do we exercise this Christ consciousness, especially when it's super challenging, when we have people in our lives that are super challenging? And I like to visualize this spectrum. You have a spectrum of namaste, I call it, where you have tolerance, and you have understanding, and then you get to compassion. So in the beginning, sometimes tolerance is all you can do. When someone bothers you, irritates you, that person may bring a visceral response. It may bring in the amygdala, the mammalian brain. Pieces of our nervous system that are outdated, that don't serve us anymore, may kick into fight and flight mode, right? So we have to transcend those. And one skill someone taught me was, when that person that upsets you comes into your purvey, just allow that person safe passage, perhaps safe passage through your mind. Not necessarily forgiveness, but just allow them safe passage through your mind. And another, right along the same vein, is just go neutral. Don't fight. Don't get engaged. Just go neutral. And somehow, the energy of what's going on kind of burns itself out. So let's move on from tolerance to understanding. Now this is, in my mind, this is seeking to understand. Seeking to understand with curiosity, perhaps, but seeking to understand in not so much in an intellectual way, but more in a heart way. And maybe it's someone that you've had in your life and you want them to be in your life, but that you tend to be, maybe it's a relative, you want that relationship, but you have a relationship that's plagued with tension. So consider this when you're in conflict with that person. What's occurring is appropriate for them in that moment. If you had gone through all the things that they had gone through in their lives, you could see that what is occurring is appropriate for them at that time, just like what's occurring for you is appropriate for you, given all that you've been through. So that's another way we can kind of diffuse this tension. I saw this saying on Facebook that says, when you finally learn that a person's behavior has more to do with their own internal struggle, less than with you, it's easier to learn compassion. You know, the person that you thought maybe was rude to you at the grocery store or on the road, they may have had the worst day of their lives. They may have had something severe happen. And to look at things through the mindset of what's occurring is appropriate for them, try that on. Another one that I think is even more powerful is from dialectic behavioral therapy, or DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. And it says there can be two truths. So instead of looking at our argument like, well, I'm right and she's wrong, or if she's right, then I'm wrong, that's what's called a zero-sum game, meaning there has to be a loser and there has to be a winner. But in this world of dialectical behavioral therapy, it says there can be her truth and there can be my truth. And it doesn't matter if it doesn't make rational sense to me. There can be, if it's a group of people fighting, there can be many truths in the room that don't necessarily intellectually agree with each other. So more than one truth. And that reminds me of when Rumi says, out beyond ideas of right and wrong, there is a field. I'll meet you there. Out beyond ideas of right and wrong. And I think that Rumi's talking about out beyond ideas of duality, needing to be right. So this is Namaste consciousness, and it moves us, I think it moves us from IQ to EQ, which is emotional intelligence, right? The world needs less intellectual intelligence. Well, it still needs that, but it needs a lot more emotional intelligence, which goes beyond needing to get a rational explanation from the person you're fighting with. So we began by talking about tolerance, and then I talked about understanding, and now we move into compassion, which is this other spectrum, the final part of the Namaste spectrum. And to help define compassion, I like to think about the triad of kindness. There's sympathy, empathy, and compassion. Sympathy is, and I could take a poll here too because there's so many definitions, but to me, sympathy is, oh, I'm sorry that happened to them, right? I'm sorry that happened to you. Empathy goes a step further in, I feel what you feel. I'm really understanding, and perhaps I've been there too. I really, putting yourself in that person's shoes, really seeking to understand and feel what they feel. And then compassion takes it one step further, which is, and I see the God in you, so I want to alleviate your suffering. And this is a popular Buddhist principle. In the metta prayer, it's, may all beings be happy, may all beings be free, may all beings be free from suffering, may all beings be free from pain. And in Buddhism, the saint, the Avalokiteshvara, goes up to the wall of enlightenment, and they can be enlightened, but they won't step into enlightenment until all other beings pass through, until all other beings cease suffering. And that's Christ consciousness, that's Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva consciousness in Buddhism. That's Kuan Yin consciousness, and it's compassion. So, I'm going to get close to the end here. There are so many ways we can show compassion. You know, on the first Saturday of each month at Martin de Porres, that's a way of showing compassion in action. One of the greatest ways to show compassion is in prayer. And it just so happens to be the prayer steps in New Thought, the most important prayer steps among all the prayer steps that are God is all there is. And when you're praying for someone else, the most important thing is, I see that person fully as divine, fully as God. That's where the healing happens. So in closing, I want to share an example of compassion that kind of stopped me in my tracks. I was watching a documentary on the Mayo Clinic, and the Mayo Clinic began as a partnership between a hospital and the Sisters of St. Francis. And the Sisters of St. Francis talked about the level of care that they give someone, and they said the doctors and the nuns held the belief, and they still do today, that they are to treat each patient as if it was Jesus Christ himself. Each patient in that way, seeing the God in them. And Mother Teresa exemplified this idea when she said, and this is Mother Teresa, what is my thought? I see Jesus in every human being. I say to myself, this is hungry Jesus. I must feed him. This is sick Jesus. I must care for him. This one has leprosy. This one has gangrene. I must wash and tend to them. So this is Christ consciousness. This is Namaste consciousness. And I'd like us to just go within a moment. Just invite more of that Namaste compassion consciousness to be right where we are right now, and we individually as emissaries of it. My soul honors your soul. I honor the place where you stand. I honor the place in you where the entire universe dwells. I honor the light, love, truth, beauty, and peace within you because it is also within me. And in sharing these things, we are united. We are the same. We are one. This is loving your neighbor as yourself. This is seeing God in everyone. And so it is. Thank you.
the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are my family. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are my family. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are my family. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of love. I hold you in my heart. You are my family. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. You are the face of God.